What is up, everybody? Undad is here. I am back. I know I said I was waiting until 9.1 dropped to start doing YouTube content again, but here we are 2 years after Shadowlands released. We have no 9.1 yet, so I'm getting antsy, and I'm going to start making a few videos here, a few guide videos for Mythic Plus for a few reasons. This will be the first one covering Fury Warrior, and this is kind of sparked from a lot of people in chat on Twitch asking just about like little reference guides to start picking up new classes. I think a lot of people are also getting bored of the patch and are trying to explore classes they haven't played before, specs they haven't played before. And there's obviously written guides out there, but there's not a lot of video content for a lot of this stuff, especially to do with Mythic Plus. And I also want to use these as like reference guides for when I start making more 9.1 focus stuff when the patch does release. I'm going to be releasing a lot of Mythic Plus guides for all the classes I play then as well, so it'd be nice to just reference back to these videos, talk about anything that's changed or new things, or stuff that stayed the same. So this will be nice, one, for you guys right now, well, in this downtime, and two, it'll help me make more content in the future too. So we're going to start with Fury Warrior today. We're going to just quick run through. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. It's just like all right, I got 10 minutes to watch a YouTube video. I want to go blast Mythic Plus on a character I never played before. Let's go. So let's get started. I think the first thing people always want to know is, what are your talents? Your talents change in Mythic Plus sometimes. For raiding, it's a little bit easy. You can just go check Warcraft logs. You see what guys play. Mythic Plus is a little bit different. Nice thing about Fury is you don't change your talents ever. You run the same talents. No matter your Covenant, no matter your Legendary, no matter what you're doing, you will play these talents in Mythic Plus, no matter what. Fresh Meat is a huge enabler to a lot of Fury's damage. This enables you to enrage on the first global of every pack, no matter what. There's a weak aura that you can track this on your nameplates, which I will link in the description if you guys are interested. This basically puts, let me go to a dummy real quick, I'll show you what it looks like. But while we're going over there, the next row, you will always take Stormbolt if you're a good boy. CC is very helpful. Warrior lacks a little bit of utility in Mythic Plus. Not so much that it lacks utility, but other melee classes just kind of do utility better. Here's a Fresh Meat weak aura. So picking up whatever you can is very important. Single target stun on a very short cooldown. This is close to kidney cooldown. Super good. Doesn't cost resources or anything. Instant cast. Now, sometimes you'll definitely see me if you're watching me playing. I will I'll not have a charge when I want to have a charge for something, and I'll just rage swap to double time before the next key and just play double time the rest of the day. But if you're actively trying to be as useful as possible in your key, you'll play Stormbolt. On 30 row, you'll play a Massacre. Anytime there's more than one target that you're fighting, you'll play Massacre. Frenzy is very good in raid for non-Ventir warriors, but it prevents target swapping. You can't target swap with this talent, so very bad for Mythic Plus. Also, you get a lot of extra executes in dungeons. A lot of small mobs die early, let you feed execute into more rage, into more cooldowns, into more damage on random packs. Next row, pretty standard. Warpaint is effectively just 10% DR all the time. In Mythic Plus, because you're not in permanent content like you are in Raid, you are in your cooldowns for like a higher proportion of the time that you're battling, because you have time between packs for your cooldowns to recover as well. And the more you're in your cooldowns, the more likely you are to be enraged, because the increased rage generation from recklessness. So this is a super, this is a lot of why like Fury is pretty good defensively in Mythic Plus, even though it may not seem that way. They don't have any like, oh man, this class has this OP ability, but it's a lot of like small things that add up. Extra health from being dual wielding two-handed weapons on top of Warpaint, and it's very difficult to die. There's some other tricks for that we'll talk about later for not dying, unique to Fury Warrior. The 40 row is the only place you will hear any arguments, I think. Some people will swear by Frothing Berserker just for more rage generation, but it's worse single target. And a lot of times, if this doesn't get you to another set of cooldowns on a pack, it probably wasn't worth it anyway, because the downtime running to the next pack will probably make up for whatever CDR you gained in Frothing. So I play Cruelty in everything. It just facilitates more single target damage. Even it facilitates more AoE damage with just more Raging Blow resets. The more Raging Blows you're able to cast while enraged, the better. Bladestorm's auto take. This is our burst AoE cooldown. On top of our legendary, which we'll talk about right after this. Has a lot of synergies with Fury Warrior right now, and really lets you actually have burst AoE, which would be a little bit missing. We have a lot of little tools, but super good. You'll take this all the time. It's also best single target. So no thoughts. Even if it's Tyrannical Week or something, like you're always just going to play this. And then finally, Anger Management. Again, this comes down to Legendary, which we'll talk about in a second. Anger Management is the move. Looks to continue being the move going into the next patch, but again, we'll talk about that in future videos. Right now, you definitely take this. So we talked about Legendaries here. What Legendary are you playing? No matter what Covenant you're playing for Fury Warrior Mythic Plus, you will play Signet of the Tormented Kings. This thing is busted. This allows you to get additional Bladestorms on packs or additional avatars in single target. A little bit of RNG involved. Both procs are good. They obviously just have better situations. When you're fighting just a boss, you prefer Avatar. When you're fighting mobs, you prefer Bladestorm. Makes Recklessness pretty sick cooldown. Here you see a proc Avatar. I got 7 seconds of Avatar now. Poggers. Inside my Recklessness. Also caused Bladestorm to proc this. So this is what makes Bladestorm even more powerful than it would be previously. So here I procced another Avatar off my Bladestorm there. Epic. This is our best choice for single target as well. So this is just an auto take. No matter the dungeon, no matter the affixes, you will play Signet or the Tormented Kings. You can put on the Ring, or what's the other slot this is on? Or Bracers. Ring is typically better because it lets you get like a nice statted ring to begin with. Talk about stats in a second. Mine's crit haste because I just want to play multiple specs. But if you're planning to just only play Fury, Fury is the only thing you're interested. You're not going to play the rest of your warrior specs. You would play haste mastery on this, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's the case with all the covenants. If you're Night Fae, if you're Necrolord, if you are Venthyr or Kyrian, you will play this legendary. It is extremely powerful in Mythic Plus, extremely powerful in Raid, and there's your decision's made for you. It's pretty chill. Now, as far as gear, we talked about stats here for a second. Haste Mastery is typically what you want to run. You want to prioritize haste for sure, as you won't be running Frenzy like some covenants do in Raid. You have to make up some haste elsewhere, so I tend to stack haste when I'm playing Mythic Plus. Also, if you're starting to get some of the endgame Raid gear, a lot of it is Mastery heavy and haste, like low haste. So we have the Helm from Sires, heavy Mastery, low haste. Both the weapons from Mythic are Mastery, heavy Mastery, and then haste. You have the highest item level pants, which don't have any haste on it, so you have to make it up for it somewhere. But then I also have a Mastery heavy ring as opposed to haste heavy ring, so that leans me towards haste. Whereas if you have the Sire ring, you can consider maybe socketing and gemming for Mastery. Typically, haste is chill to go to up to about 31%, which will give you an extra global insight and rage. So you can see I'm a bit below that, so I could even find some more haste and be coolin'. But typically I stop around, just because I also do raid on this character and I play Frenzy in a lot of those fights. I usually stop around this point, around like the 27 to 29 point. But that's like total feely craft, no math behind. I'm just saying words. So sim your characters for that for that shit. It'll help you out. You can kind of sim single target for Fury and just carry those decisions, as long as you're not changing talents. You run these talents if you're looking for like top gear for your gems and enchants and stuff. You can kind of go by that from single target, and it'll be pretty good for Mythic Plus. One of the classes that's uniquely like that is Fury. As far as trinkets go, there's a handful of good options. I prefer to run Stone Legion Heraldry and Dreadfire. I know not everybody has access to those trinkets, especially not at max item level. Mostly because it's just base main stat. Like Fury is a consistent damage class. Obviously we have burst cooldowns, but mostly the way we do damage is through consistency. So because of that, having these as just like base strength is very powerful. Dreadfire Vessel, especially this patch, is very good with Prideful. It's just like a cooldown you can use on Pride that doesn't feel like it costs you anything on packs. And it's a good priority damage ability. There's some bosses that it's very nice to have on. Any boss with damage amps, like Spire's third boss, Mist's first boss. Dreadfire is very good. The other obvious contenders are File Putrefaction. It's just a consistent AoE damage trinket. If I had this at 226, I might consider playing it over the Stone Legion. Maybe over the Dreadfire too. At 220, I just feel like I lose a little bit too much agi, or not agi, strength to play with this. Not a huge fan. Other options are the PvP haste base with the main stat proc. This is okay as well. PvP badge also okay, though I don't particularly like it. Again, we kind of talked about Fury being a consistent damage class rather than relying on bursts. So like even though badge lines up 1 minute cooldown, usually Rex a minute, usually Bladestorm's a minute. Well, Bladestorm's always a minute, but usually Rex about a minute. It lines up. It's just I feel you get more out of the consistent trinkets rather than trying to lean into badge. Another option is Power Crystal. Power Crystal combined with Rec gives you a shitload of crit and very powerful as well. This is also very good for arms if you're planning on playing some arms. So maybe scooping up one of these, not too bad. This effectively you hold this for Rec, so it usually ends up being every other Rec. Sometimes if there's downtime, you'll end up getting it on every Rec. But yeah, those are trinkets that are solid. Any of the raid trinkets are like okay while you're gearing up. If we want to take a look at them. Let's see. Warrior trinkets. So Skulkers is okay. Pass-ins is okay. Hate sheet music. I guess Spike is okay while you're gearing up just because they're just main stat. Getting that main stat on your trinkets is quite important. Again, I've said it a million times already in this 3 minutes so far that Warrior's a consistent damage class, so leaning into that with just main stat is very, very powerful. So while you're gearing up, you can grab those. They'll be fine for you. I don't think there's any other dungeon trinkets really. Box or IQD, not nuts for Fury Warrior. Just because our cooldowns aren't as impactful as other classes. So it's not like we have like Army or Incarn Convoke, or CA Convoke rather, or like Wild Spirit's True Shot. There's not like, that's not how our cooldowns work. Our cooldowns facilitate more consistent damage with a bit of burst. Like you'll see Fury Warriors burst on packs up 30, 40k, but it's not all in our burst windows, so we don't want to double down on that. And I'm a big anti-fan of box for this class. Though you'll see like other classes using it and be like, hey, why am I not using that? Well, it's because it's not that good. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that are fine. Not particularly. Decanters is okay while you're gearing up, but not something I would keep long term. Anima Field Emitter also okay while you're gearing up. I don't particularly like this long term either. Being planted, like I hated Gale Callers in BFA on haste classes, except for I played Gale Callers only on Assassination Rogue when we ran Exsanguinate. That was like early BFA, because you could snapshot the buff from Gale Callers and get the full value and then move and it's fine. But not a huge fan. Spare Meat Hook, not insane. Okay on the way up, I guess. Yeah, I guess all the trinkets are okay on the way up because they're strength based. But you're really looking for last two boss raid trinkets and file are like the three glory pieces you're looking for. So get to spamming Plague Falls, I guess, is the TLDR of this section. Let's go, dude. So now we'll talk about covenants. Now all four Fury's in like a unique spot where all four covenants are playable. They're all okay in Mythic Plus. They're all like, if you like one more than the other, you'll be all right. There's some classes where it's just like your class is unplayable if you're the wrong covenant. But Fury Warrior, and Prot Warrior, and I guess Arms Warrior, like all the Fury or all the Warrior specs they're kind of balanced. Funny enough, so you can play whatever you want. But my recommendation is to play Night Fae. I think Night Fae is a good bit ahead of the other three. The other three are very close to each other, and Night Fae is like one step up, maybe two steps up from the others. So if you are concerned with pushing Mythic Plus on Fury, where you've tricked some group into letting you do that, first of all, congratulations. It feels great. I got to play some Survival Hunter at the beginning of this patch. It feels fucking awesome when you trick your boys into letting you play an off-meta spec. Second of all, I would go Night Fae if that's what you are. That's a situation that you're in. Mostly due to the soulbinds. Soulbinds of Night Fae are insane currently, and that is mostly to do with Karain. Karain giving first strike when you first enter a pack and deal damage is nutty, on top of Ancient Aftershock, which is the ability. It's a minute and a half cooldown, does a bunch of damage, puts some junk on the ground, basically puts like an earthquake, elemental shaman earthquake, that knocks things down every time it ticks, generates rage, very poggers. This ability hits for a ton. I wonder if this is this a DOS we did last night? Yeah. So Ancient Aftershock doing 9% of my damage plus 2.5, so 11.5, almost 12% of my damage overall just from hitting this, not including the utility it brings and the rage generation. So pretty sick. That puts it up with more than Raging Blow, almost as much as Bladestorm, almost as much as Rampage. Sick ability. On top of Wild Hunt Tactics and First Strike interacting in ways that make you do a lot of damage. A big part of maximizing damage as Night Fae is finding ways to maximize First Strike. We're a capped class, so you can kind of abuse First Strike by wiggling around packs and like not hitting things if you're in a pack that's more than 5 or more than 8 if you're Bladestorming, to prolong your First Strike buff. That's kind of sweaty and doesn't make a huge difference, but it's a nice way if you're like finding yourself capping out on what you think is the skill ceiling of the class. Mythic Plus, you can work on maximizing your First Strike uptime. And you'll play, as far as soulbinds, we'll talk about soulbinds. I'll kind of go through every covenant and talk about them a little bit. Like I said, you'll play Karain here, and the conduits that you'll play is you always lean towards Destructive Reverb if you're playing single potency, which you'll always do if you're Karain. If you're playing before you have Karain unlocked, you'll play Naya. And in that case, in Mythic Plus, I think I would go with double potency, and in this case, I would slot Reverb in here, and you'll play Depths of Insanity for rec duration up here. I have this set up for, this is my like Sire Denathria Soulbind, where I play Ashen Jug for execute phase. So if you don't, before you have Karain set up, I would play Destructive Reverb, single potency. When you get to double potency, slot in Depths of Insanity, and then once you get Karain unlocked, I would swap over to Destructive Reverb and First Strike single potency. As far as finesse and endurance conduits, we have 3 that I think are useful. The rest are kind of whatever. Super useful. This is one of the most busted conduits in the game. Increases the duration and health granted by rally by 32%. So let's see. When I rally, I go from 44k to 56k. I literally gain 12k HP when I rally. It lasts 13 seconds. 13 seconds. So this is actually busted. This ability is OP. Not really why you bring Fury to Mythic Plus, but it's super helpful. So if you ever have a finesse, you slot this in. I think you always have a finesse in every soulbind. At least you can choose to always have a finesse in every soulbind there is, and you will always take this. As far as endurance, our best one, I think, for Mythic Plus is Stalwart Guardian. This is just CDR on Enrage Regen, so it's a 1.5 cooldown instead of 2. Poggers works with Shield Wall and Dab of the Sword for arms, which is also super helpful. And then finally, when you take double endurance, you take the Ignore Pain conduit. You'll use Ignore Pain fairly infrequently in Mythic Plus, but when you use it, this ability is busted, and this conduit makes it very good. An example of that is, so a lot of time when you're playing Karain, and I guess I'll talk about this now since we're talking about it, instead of waiting to the rotation section, you'll open on a pack with a charge Bladestorm, or not charge Bladestorm, charge Bloodthirst, to enrage yourself, not only proc First Strike on one thing, and then you'll immediately wreck. And that wreck will proc a Bladestorm that has full First Strike benefit that refreshes for 1 extra tick because you're hitting like the secondary mobs. Now, during these 4 seconds, you are probably pulling threat. So it is a very good idea to spend your first 60 rage on Ignore Pain. You'll typically generate enough rage through the remainder of Bladestorm to rampage once the Bladestorm's over, so you don't really lose any damage. That's rage you would have been overcapping anyway. But you're also alive. This is baseline of 7k shield, and then you feed into it because you're still Bladestorming, so you're still feeding more into it. The damage you're dealing, usually the difference between life or death. A lot of times you'll remember you can rally, you can enrage regen, and you can spell reflect while you're Bladestorming. So very important to almost always hit like all of those things. There's a lot of spells and like mob abilities you can deflect that don't seem like you could deflect, that the spell reflect actually does help. So when you pull threat, and you will, threat is the biggest obstacle of this class. You will pull threat. Remember to hit Ignore Pain. Now, as far as the other conduits go, I'll just go through, or the other covenants go, I'll go through soulbinds pretty briefly. I have some set up here. For Kyrian, you'll play double potency Pelagos, in which you'll take Depths of Insanity alongside Piercing Verdict. I take this route so that I can have 1 endurance and 1 finesse. For Necrolord, I like Emini. You have Lead by Example stacking with Veteran's Repute for some big, juicy strength bonuses. I think this is really good together. You'll play double potency again because Gnashing Chomper is not really good. It's haste. We like haste, but it's not consistent enough. It doesn't make enough of an impact on the pack when like your damage matters. Again, 1 finesse, 1 endurance, depths of insanity as our second potency. And then if you're playing Venthyr, I like Theotar. With single potency, you'll take depths of insanity, and in this situation, you get the double endurance again, and the finesse, wasteland propriety. Not nuts for Fury, because Condemn, this has a very short duration because of the low cooldown on Condemn. So you can mess around with Refined Palette. I think Soothing Shade is fairly good. I hate Naya. Thrill Seeker is just like, I don't know. Procs at all the wrong times. Not a fan. And Draven's okay. If you can stay high health for the strength, this is going to be pretty good, but I lean Theotar for Venthyr. So that's it for Covenants. Most Covenants will play, I guess we'll start talking about rotational stuff. Most Covenants, other than Venthyr, play fairly similar. I guess there's some difference as far as how you play them. So I guess we'll talk about base rotation. There's obviously written guides on both Wowhead and Icy Veins that cover this probably better than I will in just a video speaking. But the general idea, I always like to break classes down to like, what am I trying to do? Instead of just, what order do I hit my spells? What's the priority? Like I try to like come up with like conceptually, like what do I want the class? What do I want to do to get the most out of my class? And for Fury Warrior, it comes down to, I guess, 3 things. First being, don't waste rage. Waste as little rage as possible, so don't overcap on rage when you could have spent. Second is, be enraged as much as you can. Whether that's through Bloodthirst or Rampages. However you have to get enraged, the idea is to have as much uptime and enrage as you possibly can. And then the third is, cast the minimum whirlwinds possible for whatever you're doing. So in AoE, that'll be a lot more whirlwinds because you're utilizing the whirlwind passive. I thought there was a name to this, but I guess Meat Cleaver is this. You're utilizing the whirlwind passive to cleave all your stuff. So you're going to be whirlwinding more in AoE, but you still don't want to overcast whirlwind. If you don't have to, you don't want to. This is just to proc the 2 charges of your next ability's cleaving. And then in single target, you want to utilize your other abilities as much as you can, so you cast whirlwind as frequently or as infrequently as possible. So what that ends up looking like is, if you can rampage, typically you'll rampage. If you are not enraged, you will bloodthirst, followed by, if you are enraged and you have 2 stacks of raging blow, you'll raging blow. If you don't have 2 charges available, you'll still bloodthirst. That's because these are just such short cooldowns, and casting as many bloodthirsts as you can without wasting raging blows facilitates a higher enrage uptime, which again is one of our 3 like cores to how the spec works. And then the execute range, you want to execute kind of moves up to the top. Execute moves up right below capping rage. You want to hit execute if you can, and you won't cap off it. Regardless, you want to slam that button. It's very short cooldown, generates a shitload of rage. And you'll also, I guess we'll talk about, we'll get to canceling Bladestorm in a second. We can talk about openers first. So opener for Night Fae and opener for Kyrian are going to be basically the same. You will just slot in the different Covenant abilities at different spots. So you'll charge, you'll Bloodthirst, you'll instantly wreck. If you get a Bladestorm, you sit the Bladestorm until you cap energy, then you cancel and Rampage, then you Covenant ability. Then you build back to another Rampage, hit the Rampage, after you Rampage, you Bladestorm. So where I use Covenant ability there, you would use your Spear as Kyrian. And the Spear typically with the Conduit inside Wreck will push you to a Rampage right away, so it'll be less building. It'll just be Spear, Rampage, then Bladestorm. That's how you open there. On a trash pack, you'll do the same thing. If you have everything up, you'll do the same thing. So you'll Bloodthirst, and then I would Wreck immediately. At the top of the Wreck, I cancel to Rampage to re-enrage, and then I Ancient Aftershock. And then you build again, but this time while you're building, you're weaving in your whirlwinds. After the Aftershock goes out, you're weaving in your whirlwinds to make sure everything cleaves, and then you Bladestorm after your second Rampage of the pack. Now, if you don't have any of your cooldowns. You're just going to follow the priority we talked about. Where you're going to Whirlwind to put up the buff. Bloodthirst here because I'm not enraged. Enraging Blow. Whirlwind because I don't have the buff. Bloodthirst. Now I can spend it. So I Rampage. And you kind of repeat that ad infinitum. Very consistent damage. No matter what, even without cooldowns. And that's it for those two Covenant abilities. Now, for Venthyr, you just are condemning above all else. If you can condemn, you condemn. You want to cleave your condemns as well. But that's pretty much... Condemn just shifts to the top. On more than one target, you're still going to full channel Bladestorms. You're still going to full... whether they be from your Recklessness or naturally casted ones. But condemn is just... When you can condemn, you want to slam that button. And then for Necrolord, you want to pre-pull banner. So you want to banner before you charge in. And that's it. You get to your natural Bladestorm faster because you don't have a Covenant ability in between. So after your first Bladestorm, you're just chaining another Bladestorm with a Rampage in between to re-enrage. And then you go about your day. Most of the opener is figuring out how to live, more so than than it being that complicated. You're mostly sitting Bladestorms a lot of the time. So again, ignore pain, OP. Make sure you use it. Make sure you're rallying when you need to. Even if use rally as defensive a lot of the time in Mythic Plus, as well as in Rage Regen while you're Bladestorming. I talked about Spell Reflect earlier. I'm going to link a spreadsheet that's been put together by Sense, who's been doing this for Warrior for ever. He makes some of the best like documented content there is for any class. Just going in and testing basically every ability in the game, if it's reflectable, if it does damage, if it's deflectable, which typically means it doesn't do damage, but it makes you not take the damage, and what portions of what spells are like that. So I'm going to link that in the description below as well, along with the weak aura for fresh meat I talked about. And then just briefly, I'm going to talk about some bosses and how I tend to use cooldowns or bosses that like have question marks about like where should you use your stuff. So Hikar, I hold Bladestorm for first ads. Everything else I just send. Typically the only things that I hold is Bladestorm. I'll typically send Wreck on cooldown. I'll send Ancient Aftershock on cooldown almost always. And Bladestorm is what I'll hold because the natural Bladestorm is just not as impactful as the other two abilities in single target at least. It's basically there to facilitate the legendary. Damage Bladestorm is not super nuts on single target, so holding it for multi-target works out pretty well. Mana Storm, I don't hold anything. We have minute cooldowns. These phases are a minute long. The Aftershock will come up during the second boss, which is the important part. And then it won't come up if you have to do the first boss a second time, which is good because you want to use it on the second boss the second time. So you can send everything on cooldown on Mana Storms and be chilling. Dealer, you can send everything on cooldown and be chilling. Check the Spell Reflect guide for this boss. A lot of stuff you can do there. With Zala, I also send everything on cooldown. The first phase is a minute, no matter what, which means, just like the Mana Storms, you can use all your cooldowns in the first phase and then also get them for your ad, and you will dump on your ad. There's no real point in saving anything when you get to your ad. You can just kind of send. So that's it for the other side. Halls of Atonement. There is nothing really to speak of other than on Echelon, I hold Bladestorm for first set of ads. And then I send Aftershock on pull. And then Aftershock should line up with the second set of ads. You should have Bladestorm and Aftershock. Or not Bladestorm, Aftershock. Wreck and Aftershock for second set of ads. Or just Aftershock if you want to send the Wreck earlier. If you're lusting, you'll probably get Wreck up a little bit ahead of time. So yeah, hold Bladestorm for first set. And then everything kind of lines up for the rest of the fight. Little trick on Lord Chamberlain that not everybody knows. I don't know how to depict this without a picture, so hopefully you know what I'm talking about. So he has two abilities that are important to consider here. He has his telekinetic toss where he chucks a statue, and then he has his Door of Shadows where he goes to the middle and he pulls all the statues in. Now, if you push from the first phase to the second phase, because he'll do Door at 66 and 33% health, if you push those two, that percentage, before he does another toss, before he chucks a statue, you can stand under the boss and you won't get hit by the statues getting pulled in. Underneath the boss will be a safe spot. So if he chucks a statue once in between, you're no longer safe and you have to step out, but just a little way to min-max damage if you're in your weekly keys and you notice, oh, he didn't toss a statue. I'm chill. I can get another 6 seconds on the boss. Very poggers. Mists, I Bladestorm on pull on Ingram Malik, and I send Wreck and Aftershock on the damage amp phase. That means you can use those two on the Pride beforehand. Typically, it depends on your group's damage. You can definitely use them on the pack before and have everything on the Pride, depending on how low the key is and what your damage is like. But that's how I use that here. Mistcaller, abuse first strike if you're not wearing File. So if you're wearing File, don't do this because you will just ruin your team's day. Because File will proc on the ad. But when she spawns the little fox, heroic throw it. You get a first strike buff. Poggers. If you're running File, you'll dot it, and then you won't be able to CC it anymore, and your team will hate you. So don't do that if you're running File. Do it if you're not. Tridova, nothing crazy. Just play the fight. Plaguefall, you can reflect the stomp, and it does big damage. That's a big one. There's obviously a lot of things you can reflect, but this one is huge. Rest of the dungeon, nothing crazy. Again, you can hold Bladestorm on Venom Blade for first set ads. Margrave, use everything on cooldown. Blah, 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 blah. Sanguine D's. Reflect on Grand Proctor. This is very important to know, I think. Effects makes it so you don't get the dot, but you still take big damage. So you do want to get orbs. Don't just ignore orbs, but the reflect will prevent the dot from being applied, which is nice. So you can do that on everyone. Nothing else crazy to think about. Reflect really good on Executor. You got to pre-reflect if the dude's on you. Castigate. And you take no damage. Reflect's actually kind of insane. Opheron, if you have everything on pull, you can use. And you will get for the damage MPs, as long as your tank doesn't do more than 2 charge stomps. 2 charge stomps is the sweet spot for 1 minute phases on the first damage amp. So you can use everything and then you'll have everything up. Pagas. Everything else kind of normal. Just play the game. Don't be weird. Necrotic Wake. First strike works on weapons. You don't really have a way to drop threat as warrior, so maybe don't do that. But just something to think about, I guess. All the weapons you can first strike buff, and that is sick. Is there anything in particular that No, when you come up from Nalthor, you get 100% crit for a while. So I think the move, and this is like, I've been going back and forth on this actually. I think the move is to not use cooldowns during it because obviously Wreck gives you crit. There's a time where I thought, man, I have 100% crit. I should try to funnel all this rage gen into it. But I think holding, I don't know. I go back and forth literally every Necrotic Wake I run on what the right move is there. I don't know. Play the game. Don't be weird, Necrotic Wake. And then Theater of Pain. Oh, you can actually... This is tricky, but you can taunt, reflect, Reaping Scythes. As long as you don't take a melee, you'll be fine. On most key levels, taking a melee will be fine. This does big damage to the boss if you can get reflects on the Reaping Scythe. And it means your tank, like, this is like what kills your tank on this boss. It means your tank doesn't have to take damage from it. So that's pretty sick. Other than that, you kind of just, you're chilling. I hold Bladestorm for the banner on Zav. And that is about it. There's nothing really special on Trash, I think, that Warrior does. I think one of the nice things that you should remember, if I leave you with one thing, if you're a Warrior player in Mythic Plus, I leave you with one thing. I leave you with this. Charge. Whirlwind. Now watch this. Hamstring. Oh my god, it's on everything. Your tank won't understand why everything's slow, but he'll be so happy. It does use a Whirlwind charge to do this, I think, obviously, but so it is a DPS loss when you do this, but if you don't have Piercing Howl, you should be Piercing Howl a lot. Like, Piercing Howl is fucking OP, dude. 70% slow. Can't have max uptime on it, though, right? So, when you can't, if your tank's kiting, save him. You can cleave Whirlwinds. And I think that's it. I thought I was going to do this in like 15 minutes, and here we are 35 minutes later. Epic. I hope I helped you guys a little bit. This is just like man, I try to make quick guide, and it turns into this. Well, there you go. Go play Fury Warrior in Mythic Plus. I'll be back soon. I think we'll do Arms Warrior next. and start getting into other classes for all this stuff. If you want to check me out playing any of the classes I'm going to do, right now I'm playing 8 characters right now. So we're playing Warrior, Mage, Shaman, Druid, DK, Hunter, Demon Hunter, and Rogue. You can catch me at twitch.tv/undadtv. I'll put a link below as well if you want to check me out there. Rating in Mythic Plus pretty much always lately. And you can find me on Twitter at the same handle, undadtv. If you like the video, please like it. I don't know how to do this YouTube stuff, man. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, give me tons of money, something like that. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.